Part 4. The Turning Point Commander. Young Mi Ro cut through the airlock with a plasma torch, her 50 Marines arranged in combat formation behind her. The metal glowed red, then white, then finally gave way. They poured into the Valthene dreadnought like water breaking through a dam. The corridors inside were massive, built for beings taller than humans. Everything was sharp angles and cold metal. Alarms were screaming. Young Mi's helmet display showed a rough map based on exterior scans, but they were essentially going in blind. Their objective was simple: reach the reactor core and plant nuclear charges. The Eternal Dominion had to die. Valthene soldiers appeared around a corner, tall and gray with weapons that looked like organic growths. They fired beams of energy that scorched the walls. Private Junho Lee was hit in the shoulder, his armor absorbing most of the impact but leaving him burned and thrown backward. He gritted his teeth and kept firing, his rifle sending bullets downrange in controlled bursts. The Marines advanced meter by meter. The Valthene were tough, but they had never fought humans at close range before. Marines used grenades, smoke, tactics designed for urban warfare on Earth. The aliens were trained for ship-to-ship combat, not this kind of brutal, close-quarters fighting. 10 minutes, Young Mi shouted over the communication channel. That's how long until the Indomitable has to pull back. We need to be done and evacuated by then. They fought through 3 decks. 12 Marines died. The rest kept moving, driven by desperation and training. Finally, they reached the reactor chamber. It was enormous, a sphere of contained energy that powered the entire dreadnought. Engineers worked at control stations, unaware of the humans until it was too late. Young Mi personally placed the charges while her Marines held the entrances. Nuclear weapons, small but powerful enough. She set the timer 5 minutes. Everyone out. Move, move, move. The retreat was worse than the advance. The Valthene knew what the humans had done and were trying to stop them from escaping. Combat in the corridors was desperate and savage. They lost 8 more Marines getting back to the boarding shuttle. When they finally sealed the airlock and launched, there were 30 survivors out of 50 who had started the mission. The shuttle rocketed away from the Eternal Dominion as fast as its engines could push. Behind them, the dreadnought continued fighting. Grand Admiral Thexazal still issuing orders, still trying to salvage victory from disaster. Then the charges detonated. The reactor containment failed. The explosion was visible across half the solar system, a brief new star in the darkness. The Eternal Dominion and everyone aboard ceased to exist. The Valthene fleet broke. Without their admiral, without their flagship facing losses they had never imagined possible, they retreated. The remaining ships jumped to faster-than-light speed and fled back toward their own territory. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Ji-Wan watched them go. She felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion. Around her, the crew was silent. They had won the Battle of Terra's Gate, but the cost had been terrible. 35 capital ships destroyed, over 4,000 fighter pilots dead, tens of thousands of people who would never go home. 6 months passed. The war ground into a stalemate along a contested border zone. Both sides were bleeding, neither able to deliver a knockout blow. The Valthene still had vast resources, but their confidence was shattered. Humanity was running out of ships faster than they could build replacements. Captain Sung-Ho An commanded the stealth ship Ghost Protocol. His mission was deep reconnaissance, slipping past Valthene defenses to gather intelligence. What he discovered changed everything. The Valthene Empire was not the united force they pretended to be. They controlled dozens of species, kept in line through force and fear. And those species were growing restless. Meanwhile, Ambassador Minji Bayek was making contact with those same species. She traveled secretly to meet with the Corvinian Resistance, a group fighting for independence from Valthene rule. The Corvinians were reptilian beings, their scales green and brown. They had been conquered 200 years ago and had never stopped resisting. Your war with the Valthene has inspired us, the Corvinian leader told Minji. If humans can fight the Empire and survive, perhaps we can be free. Minji chose her words carefully. We're not asking you to die for us, but if you're already fighting for your own freedom, we might be able to help each other. Similar conversations were happening across a dozen worlds. The Valthene Empire, which had seemed monolithic and invincible, was actually held together by 1,000 threads of fear and coercion. Humanity's resistance was fraying those threads. Then the intelligence reached Earth that changed everything. Empress Velantha, The ancient ruler of the Valthine Empire was preparing a final solution. Planet-killer weapons, doomsday devices that could sterilize entire worlds. She planned to use them on human colonies as a message: submit or be exterminated completely. 2 human colonies were in immediate danger: New Sol and Promise Station. Together they held nearly 1 million people. Earth didn't have the ships to defend them and maintain the front lines. General Tai Yang proposed a desperate plan. We can't defend everywhere, but we can attack them where they don't expect it. Sung Ho's reconnaissance shows their supply lines are stretched thin. If we hit their logistics hard enough, we can cripple their ability to continue the war. President Yoonji looked at the tactical displays with haunted eyes. And what about the colonies? What about the 1 million people waiting for us to protect them? Elder Counselor Jae-won Nam spoke up. He was an old man, a strategist who had advised 3 presidents. Madam President, there's another option. A dangerous one. We let the Valthine come to Earth. The room went silent. Jae-won continued, his voice steady. They want to end this war as much as we do. They've been fighting for months, suffering losses they never imagined. If Valantha commits her personal fleet to attack Earth, their homeworld will be vulnerable. We could strike there while they're here. That's insane, Taeyang said. We'd be sacrificing Earth. No, Jae-won replied. We'd be using Earth as bait. We have orbital defenses, ground-based weapons, reserve fleets. We can hold long enough for a strike force to reach the Valthine homeworld and force them to recall their fleet. If it works, we end the war. If it fails, he didn't need to finish the sentence. President Yoonji made the decision that would define her legacy. We do it, prepare Operation Prometheus, hit their supply lines, and prepare a strike force for the Valthine homeworld. Captain Ji-won will lead it. The operation began with brutal efficiency. Human ships struck at Valthine supply depots across 30 systems simultaneously. They used hit-and-run tactics, destroying warehouses, fuel dumps, repair stations. The Valthine logistics network, which had supported their empire for centuries, began to collapse. At the same time, the subjugated species rose up. The Corvanians attacked Valthine garrison forces. Other species followed their example. Suddenly, the empire was fighting wars on 100 fronts. Their forces scattered and stretched impossibly thin. Empress Valantha watched her empire fracturing with cold fury. She was 300 years old, had ruled for 2 centuries. No one had ever successfully defied her like this. She made her decision with the certainty of someone who believed themselves infallible. She would personally lead the Imperial fleet to burn Earth. The humans would be made an example that would terrify the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. 300 Valthine warships gathered at the edge of human space. Valantha stood aboard her personal dreadnought, the Infinite Dominion, and gave the order to advance. They would reach Earth in 3 days. And then the rebellious humans would learn the price of defiance. On Earth, people watched the skies and prepared. Orbital defense platforms were armed. Missile batteries were prepped. Ground forces stood ready to fight if the enemy made landfall. 60 human ships, everything that could be spared, formed a defensive line. And in a hidden staging area, Captain Ji-won briefed her strike force. 40 ships, fast vessels, stripped of everything non-essential to maximize speed. Their mission was simple and suicidal. Reach the Valthine homeworld, threaten it directly, force Valantha to pull back from Earth. We're not trying to conquer their planet, Ji-won told her captains. We're trying to make them realize that if they destroy Earth, they lose their own home. It's mutually assured destruction, the same concept that kept humans from annihilating ourselves during the nuclear age. Lieutenant Minho was aboard the Indomitable, as was most of Ji-won's original crew. Hana had the engines running at peak efficiency. Everyone knew the odds were against them, but they also knew that Earth needed time, needed hope. And sometimes hope required people willing to take impossible risks. All ships, Ji-won broadcast, prepare for faster-than-light jump. We're going to end this war one way or another. May whatever gods you believe in watch over us. The strike force vanished into FTL, racing toward the heart of the Valthine Empire, while behind them, Earth prepared for the fight of its existence. Part 1. First Contact Protocol. The silence in space was absolute. Captain Ji-won Kim stood on the bridge of the UHSV Indomitable, staring at the empty coordinates where the Pioneer's hope should have been. The exploration vessel had stopped transmitting 3 days ago. Now there was nothing but scattered metal debris floating in the darkness near the Epsilon Reach Nebula. Scan again. Ji-won said quietly. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency around her. The Indomitable was Earth's newest warship, fresh from the orbital shipyards above Luna. This was supposed to be a simple shakedown cruise, testing systems, checking readiness. Instead, they were looking for survivors. Lieutenant Min-ho Park looked up from his tactical station. His young face was tight with concentration. Captain, I'm picking up a life sign. Very faint. Distance, 2,000 meters, bearing 347. Ji-won didn't hesitate. Hana, get a retrieval team ready. Bring them in fast. Chief Engineer Hana Choi was already moving toward the airlock. 20 minutes later, they pulled a woman in a torn EVA suit through the outer door. She was barely conscious, her suit's oxygen nearly depleted. The medical team rushed her to the infirmary while Ji-won waited, pacing outside the door. When the woman finally woke, her eyes were wild with terror. They came out of nowhere, she whispered. Her name was Suki Lee, an engineer from the Pioneer's Hope. Massive ships, bigger than anything we've ever built. They didn't even try to communicate, just fired. Ambassador Dae-ho Yoon stepped forward. He was a thin man with kind eyes who had spent his career trying to prepare humanity for peaceful first contact with alien life. Did you see what they looked like? He asked gently. Suki nodded, trembling. Tall, gray skin, eyes like black glass. They sent one message before they destroyed us. Just 2 words in our language, submit, obey. Ji-won felt ice form in her stomach. This was humanity's first contact with intelligent alien life, and it was already a disaster. She looked at Dae-ho. We need to report this immediately. Before they could move, alarms shrieked across the ship. Minho's voice came over the intercom, sharp and urgent. Captain, to the bridge. Multiple contacts incoming. Ji-won ran. When she burst onto the bridge, the main screen showed 3 enormous vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They were angular and cruel-looking, covered in what appeared to be armor plating. Each ship was at least twice the size of the Indomitable. They're hailing us, Minho said. Audio only. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and mechanical, translated by their computers. Primitive vessel. You have entered territory claimed by the Valthine Empire. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance means death. Dae-ho stepped forward quickly. Captain, let me try to negotiate. This doesn't have to end in violence. Ji-won nodded reluctantly. Open a channel. Dae-ho spoke carefully, choosing each word with precision. This is Ambassador Dae-ho Yoon of Earth. We mean no harm. We were searching for our lost vessel. We didn't know this space was claimed. We're willing to leave peacefully and discuss boundaries through diplomatic channels. There was a long pause. Then a different voice responded, filled with what sounded like contempt. Your words are meaningless. All lesser species either submit to the Valthine or are eliminated. You have 30 seconds to comply. Lesser species? Minho muttered, his hands already moving across his controls. They're targeting us, Captain. Weapons hot. Ji-won looked at Dae-ho. The ambassador's face had gone pale. They're not going to listen, he said quietly. I don't think they ever listen. 20 seconds, Minho announced. Ji-won made her decision. She had spent 15 years in Earth's naval forces, rising through the ranks, earning her command through skill and determination. She had trained for combat scenarios, studied tactical theory, prepared for the possibility that humanity might not be alone in the universe, but she had never imagined it would be like this. All hands battle stations, she said clearly. Minho, target their weapon systems. Hana, I need full power to shields and engines. Dae-ho, get to a secure location. 10 seconds, Minho said. The Valthine ships moved into formation, their weapon ports glowing with building energy. Then one of them fired, not at the Indomitable, but at a nearby asteroid. The rock simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant by a beam of pure energy. Warning shot, Ji-won said. They want us to see what they can do. 5 seconds, Minho, Ji-won said, her voice steady. Fire. The Indomitable opened up with everything it had. Railguns launched tungsten slugs at a fraction of light speed. Missile tubes spat out a swarm of guided warheads. Point defense lasers swept space, creating a web of destruction. The Valthine shields lit up as the energy weapons hit them, absorbing the laser fire easily. The aliens probably felt confident. Then the railgun slugs arrived. The kinetic projectiles punched through the Valthine shields like they weren't even there. The aliens had designed their defenses to stop energy weapons, plasma bolts, directed radiation. They had never encountered something as simple and brutal as metal moving at incredible speed. The lead Valthene ship shuddered as tungsten rounds tore through its hull. Atmosphere vented into space. Secondary explosions rippled across its surface. The missiles followed seconds later, overwhelming its damaged defenses, detonating in a chain reaction that broke the ship in half. The other two Valthene vessels scattered, trying to maneuver, returning fire with their energy weapons. The Indomitable's shields held, designed by Earth's engineers to handle both energy and kinetic threats. Ji-won felt the ship shake under her feet as the alien beams hammered against their defenses. Second target locked, Minho said, his voice tight with adrenaline. Fire. Another barrage. Another Valthene ship died, its reactor going critical, exploding in a brief star of nuclear fire. The third vessel turned to run, trying to jump to faster than light speed. Don't let it get away, Ji-won ordered. If it reports back with our capabilities, we lose the element of surprise. The Indomitable was faster. Its engines, built with cutting-edge human technology, pushed it forward in pursuit. Minho launched a full spread of long-range missiles. 3 of them made it through the fleeing ship's desperate point defense fire. The Valthene vessel exploded silently, its debris joining the wreckage of its companions. The bridge was silent for a long moment. 47 seconds had passed since Ji-won gave the order to fire. 3 alien warships were destroyed. Not a single person aboard the Indomitable had been killed. Hana's voice came over the intercom, shaking slightly. Captain, all systems nominal. Minor damage to forward shields. We can repair it. Minho was staring at his screens like he couldn't believe what they showed. Captain, according to these readings, those ships were over 200 years old. Battle-tested. Their technology is proven across dozens of conflicts. He looked up at her. And we just destroyed them in less than a minute. Ji-won nodded slowly. She walked to the main viewport and looked out at the debris field. Somewhere out there, the wreckage of 3 alien ships drifted in the void. Somewhere further out, an empire that had ruled for thousands of years had just learned that humanity existed, and humanity had just told them no. Get me a secure line to Earth Command, Ji-won said quietly. Tell them we've made first contact. Tell them it's hostile, and tell them we're going to need a lot more ships. Daeho appeared beside her, his face troubled. Captain, what have we just started? Ji-won looked at him. We didn't start this, Ambassador. They did when they destroyed the Pioneer's hope. When they demanded we submit without even trying to talk. When they threatened to kill us for simply existing in the wrong place. She turned back to the viewport, but we're damn well going to finish it. Part 5. The Price of Victory. The Valthene Imperial fleet reached Earth like a storm made of metal and fury. 300 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their weapons already charging. On the bridge of the Infinite Dominion, Empress Velantha watched the small blue planet hanging in space with cold satisfaction. This world would burn. The humans would be erased from existence as a warning to every other species that might dare to resist Valthene rule. Admiral Hyun Kang commanded Earth's defense from the orbital station Unity 1. Around him, 60 human ships took up defensive positions. It wasn't enough. Everyone knew it wasn't enough. But they would fight anyway because that's what humans did when facing extinction. They fought. All ships, this is Admiral Hyun. Today we defend our home. We defend every person below us, every child, every dream of the future. The enemy has numbers. We have something better. We have everything to lose and nothing to surrender. Make them bleed for every meter of space. The battle began with a barrage of fire that lit up the orbital space. Valthene energy weapons burned through vacuum, striking human shields. The new hybrid defenses held better than the old ones would have, but ships still died. The destroyer Dauntless was the first casualty, its reactor detonating when 3 Valthene cruisers focused fire simultaneously. On Earth's surface, people in cities watched the lights in the sky. They knew each flash was death, was sacrifice. In Tokyo, millions gathered in shelters. In New York, emergency services prepared for the worst. In Mumbai, Seoul, and Lagos, people held their loved ones close and prayed to whatever gods they believed in. The orbital defense platforms opened fire, massive railguns launching tungsten projectiles that could crack continents. One Valthene battleship died when a platform shot punched through its shields and core in a single devastating strike. But the platforms were immobile targets, and the Valthene focused fire on them methodically. One by one, the platforms went silent, destroyed or disabled. Lieutenant Minho had been left behind to help coordinate Earth's defense. He worked from Unity 1, his tactical screens showing a nightmare of red enemy markers slowly overwhelming the blue friendly forces. They were losing. Slowly, inevitably, they were losing. On the surface, General Taeyang commanded ground forces preparing for invasion. The Valthine would want to make an example. They wouldn't just destroy Earth from orbit. They would land, would occupy, would make humans kneel before they died. He wouldn't let that happen without a fight. 100 light-years away, Captain Jiwan's strike force dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Valthine home system. The planet Valth Prime hung before them, a world of gray cities and massive orbital structures. It was beautiful in its way, a testament to an ancient civilization, and it was almost completely undefended. Sensors show maybe 20 ships in the system, Hana reported from engineering. All of them look like patrol vessels and cargo haulers. No major warships. Jiwan felt a cold certainty settle over her. This was the moment. Everything depended on what happened in the next few hours. Open a channel to the planet. Broadcast on all frequencies. I want everyone down there to hear this. When the channel was open, she spoke clearly. This is Captain Jiwan Kim of the United Human Space Forces. Your Empress has taken 300 warships to attack Earth. She intends to destroy our homeworld and kill everyone on it. We are here to give you a choice. Recall your fleet from Earth immediately, or we will be forced to respond. We do not want to harm civilians. We are not like your Empress, but we will defend our people at any cost. The response came quickly, but not from the planetary government. It came from multiple Valthine military channels, encrypted but quickly decoded by human AI systems. Generals, admirals, commanders throughout the system were communicating with each other, and what they were saying shocked G1. The Empress has led us to ruin. How many fleets have we lost to these humans? How many ships? How many lives? And now she would sacrifice our homeworld for her pride? The humans could have attacked already. They have us at their mercy. But they're offering terms? That's more mercy than Velantha has ever shown to anyone. Perhaps it's time for new leadership. A military coup was unfolding in real time. The Valthine forces in the home system, faced with destruction and offered an alternative, were choosing to save their world rather than follow an empress who they increasingly saw as leading them to extinction. At Earth, the battle had turned desperate. 40 human ships remained fighting against 250 Valthine vessels. The orbital space was filled with debris and bodies. Entire sections of Unity 1 were vented to space. Admiral Hyun was bleeding from a head wound but refused to leave the command center. We just need to hold a little longer, he said, though he had no idea if the strike force had even reached the Valthine homeworld. Maybe they were already dead. Maybe this sacrifice meant nothing. Then suddenly the Valthine fleet began to pull back. Ships that had been pressing the attack turned and moved to defensive positions. Velantha's face appeared on every screen, transmitted to both human and Valthine forces. What is the meaning of this? She demanded. I ordered you to destroy the human planet. A Valthine admiral, one of the fleet commanders, responded. His voice was steady, but there was steel in it. Your Majesty, we have received word from Valth Prime. Human forces are in our home system. Our families are at risk. We must return to defend them. You will do no such thing. Velantha's fury was terrible to behold. The humans are primitives. They would never dare. They dared, Your Majesty, the Admiral interrupted. They dared because you gave them no choice. You demanded their destruction. They responded by threatening ours. And unlike you, they're offering mercy if we stand down. I am your Empress. You will obey. But the Valthine fleet was already withdrawing, jumping to FTL despite Velantha's orders. The coup that started at Valth Prime had spread. Throughout the Empire, military commanders were refusing orders, were taking control of their vessels. The Valthine Empire, which had stood for millennia, was collapsing from within. Velantha's personal guard attempted to arrest her on the bridge of the Infinite Dominion. She fought, killed 3 of them with her bare hands before they overwhelmed her. The ancient Empress was taken to the brig while her ship's captain negotiated surrender terms with Admiral Hyun. At Valth Prime, G1 received the same surrender from the planetary government. She had won without firing a shot. The threat had been enough, Captain, Hana said quietly. We could destroy this planet, launch every missile we have. They couldn't stop us. Jiwan looked at the world hanging in space before her. Billions of Valthine lived there. Families, children, people who had never asked for this war. She thought about the 2 million humans who had died in the conflict. She thought about the Marines who had sacrificed themselves on the Eternal Dominion. She thought about every ship that had burned, every life that had ended. No, she said, that's not who we are. We're not conquerors. We're not exterminators. We came here to protect Earth, not to become monsters. Open a channel to the planet. Tell them the war is over. Tell them we're willing to negotiate peace. The armistice negotiations took 6 months. Representatives from Earth, the Valthene, and all the species that had been under Valthene control gathered at a neutral station. The terms were clear. The Valthene Empire would be dissolved. Each species would have the right to self-determination. War crimes would be investigated. Reparations would be paid. Captain Jiwan stood at the memorial on Luna, looking at the names carved into black stone. 2 million humans. Engineers, soldiers, pilots, civilians. People who had been on Earth when the Valthene bombarded cities. People who had died in ships torn apart in battle. Private Junho Lee's name was there, killed in the final desperate defense of Unity 1 when a Valthene boarding party broke through. Ambassador Daiho approached her quietly. He looked older now, the war having aged him. Captain, I have news. The Galactic Council has extended an invitation to humanity. They want us to join as full members. Jiwan didn't respond for a long moment. She traced her fingers over the names on the memorial. We paid a terrible price for that invitation. Yes, Daiho agreed. But we also changed the galaxy. The Corvinians are free. The Syntherians, the Vex, the Tyrrhenians, dozens of species that were enslaved are now independent. The old empire is gone. A new federation is being born from its ashes. Because we could have destroyed them and chose not to, Jiwan said quietly. Because we showed mercy when we had the power to enact revenge. She thought about that choice, the one she had made at Valth Prime. It would have been so easy to pull the trigger. To make them pay for every human death. But that would have made humanity just another empire of conquerors. Instead, they had shown a different path. 3 years after the war ended, a new ship launched from Earth orbit. The Second Dawn was an exploration vessel, unarmed except for defensive systems, crewed by scientists and diplomats. Its mission was to explore uncharted space and make peaceful contact with new civilizations. Part 2. The Empire mobilizes Grand Admiral Thexazal had lived for 230 years. He had commanded fleets that burned entire worlds. He had crushed rebellions, conquered systems, and expanded the Valthene Empire's borders across 1,000 light-years. In all that time, he had never lost a battle. Now he stood in the war room of the Imperial Command Station, staring at a holographic display that made no sense. 3 ships destroyed, 1 primitive vessel responsible. The attacking ship had escaped without serious damage. Impossible, muttered Warlord Krenzith beside him. The younger officer's face was twisted with anger. The report must be wrong. Some kind of malfunction. Perhaps the ships destroyed each other by accident. Thexazal said nothing for a long moment. He had read the automated data transmission from the scout fleet before they were destroyed. He had seen the sensor readings. The human ship had used weapons the Valthene had abandoned millennia ago. Crude kinetic projectiles, simple missiles, technology so primitive it was almost laughable, except it had worked. Send Warlord Krenzith to deal with this, Thexazal said finally. 40 warships. Crush them quickly before word spreads that the Empire can be challenged. Krenzith's eyes gleamed with anticipation. It will be my pleasure, Grand Admiral. These humans will learn what happens when you defy the Valthene. Meanwhile, the UHSV Indomitable was running for its life. Captain Jiwan had ordered a fighting retreat back toward human space, but the journey would take weeks even at maximum speed. And the Valthene were coming. Contact, Minho shouted. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL. Count is 40. 40 enemy vessels. Jiwan felt her stomach drop. 40 ships. They had barely survived an encounter with 3. She looked at the tactical display, her mind racing through options. Running in a straight line meant certain death. The Valthene ships were individually slower, but with that many vessels they could spread out, cut off escape routes, wear down the Indomitable through sheer numbers. Take us into the nebula, she ordered. Full speed. The Epsilon Reach Nebula was a massive cloud of gas and dust, laced with magnetic storms and radiation. It would interfere with sensors on both sides, make targeting difficult. It would also slowly cook anyone who stayed inside too long, but it would give them a fighting chance. Hana's voice crackled over the intercom. Captain, the nebula's radiation will degrade our systems. We can last maybe 3 days before we need to get out and repair. Then we make those 3 days count, Jiwan replied. Minho, I want you to work with Hana. We're going to use every trick we can think of. Mines, false sensor signatures. Anything to slow them down and make them bleed. Over the next 72 hours, the Indomitable became a ghost. They would appear on sensors long enough to launch an attack, then vanish back into the nebula's interference. Minho designed minefields that looked like natural debris until Valthene ships got too close. They used the magnetic storms to mask their movements, appearing where the enemy didn't expect. The Valthene bled ships. First one destroyed when it stumbled into a minefield, then 2 more ambushed when they split off from the main group. Then another, rammed by a kamikaze drone that Minho had programmed to look like the Indomitable on sensors until it was too late. Warlord Krenzith grew more furious with each loss. He had started with 40 ships. Now he had 32. The humans had 1 vessel, damaged and running. How was this possible? His officers had no answers. The humans fought without honor, hiding and striking from the shadows like cowards. They are primitives, he roared at his bridge crew. How are primitives defeating us? One of his tactical officers, a younger Valthene named Shenkor, spoke carefully. Lord, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. The humans are using the environment against us. They understand this nebula better than we do. If we pulled back and waited for them to emerge, Krenzith struck him across the face, sending the officer sprawling. We do not run from lesser beings. We press forward. All ships full advance. I want that human vessel found and destroyed. It was exactly what Jiwan had been hoping for. Angry enemies made mistakes. She had been studying the Valthene tactics, watching their patterns. They relied on overwhelming force and superior technology. They had never needed to develop sophisticated strategy because they had never faced a real threat before. On the 4th day, Rear Admiral Hyun Kang arrived with Earth's 3rd Fleet. 12 ships, not as advanced as the Indomitable but crewed by determined humans who had heard what happened at Epsilon Reach. They had come to even the odds. Good to see you, Captain. Hyun's voice came over the communication channel. We got your message. Earth Command is mobilizing everything. But for now, we're what you've got. Jiwan felt relief flood through her. 13 human ships against 32 Valthene. Still bad odds, but manageable. Admiral, I have a plan. But it's going to cost us. I'm listening, Jiwan explained quickly. The Valthene were charging through the nebula, frustrated and careless. If the human fleet could lure them into a specific region where the magnetic storms were strongest, where sensor interference was at its maximum, they could ambush the aliens in conditions that favored human technology. Our computers are better, Jiwan said. Our AI can filter through the interference faster than their organic crews. If we can get them into the worst part of the storm, we'll see them before they see us. Hyun was quiet for a moment. You realize some of our ships might not survive this? I know, sir. But if we don't stop them here, they'll follow us back to Earth. And then a lot more than a few ships will be lost. Understood. All fleet elements, this is Admiral Hyun. Prepare for combat maneuvers. We're going to show these bastards what humans can do when we're cornered. The trap was set. The Indomitable showed itself briefly, damaged and seemingly desperate, broadcasting distress signals. Krenzith took the bait immediately, ordering his entire fleet forward at maximum speed. They entered the magnetic storm like predators chasing wounded prey. The human ships were waiting, positioned with precision, their computers compensating for the interference that left the Valthene half-blind. All ships, G1 broadcast. Fire, the battle was chaos. Railgun slugs tore through Valthene hulls. Missiles found their targets despite the storm. 3 human ships were destroyed in the first minute, overwhelmed by return fire. But 15 Valthene vessels died, their shields useless against kinetic weapons, their sensors too confused to target effectively. Krenzith realized too late that he had been led into a killing field. He tried to order a retreat, but the storm scattered his communications. Each Valthene captain was fighting independently without coordination. The humans moved as a pack, their shared tactical network keeping them synchronized despite the interference. Private Junho Lee was aboard the destroyer Steadfast when it took a direct hit from a Valthene energy beam. The ship shuddered and half the lights went out. He grabbed his rifle and ran toward his battle station with the other Marines, knowing that if the ship was breached, they would be the last line of defense. The Steadfast survived, but just barely. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it was over, 23 Valthene ships were destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had lost 5 vessels. Warlord Krenzith's flagship was a burning wreck, split in half by concentrated railgun fire. The remaining Valthene ships retreated, jumping to FTL as fast as their damaged engines could manage. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Jiwan slumped in her command chair. Her uniform was soaked with sweat. Around her, the crew was exhausted but alive. Minho was staring at his screens with wide eyes. Hana's report showed extensive damage but nothing they couldn't repair. "Captain," Minho said quietly, "we just won." "We actually won," Jiwan nodded slowly. They had won this battle. But she knew deep in her bones that this was just the beginning. The Valthene Empire had ruled for thousands of years. They would not accept defeat from a species they considered primitive. They would come back with more ships, better tactics, determination to crush humanity completely. Admiral Hyun's face appeared on the main screen. His expression was grim despite the victory. "Captain Kim, I've received word from Earth Command. They're mobilizing the entire fleet. Every nation is contributing. We're going to war." Jiwan looked out at the debris field, at the wreckage of both human and alien ships floating in the storm. Somewhere in that debris, hundreds of beings had died. Some human, some Valthene. All of them somebody's son or daughter, somebody's friend, somebody who had dreams and fears and people they loved. "Then we'd better win," she said quietly. Part 3. Human Ingenuity vs. Galactic Might 3. Months passed like a held breath. Earth became a world transformed. Every orbital shipyard worked around the clock. Factories that once built cars and appliances now produced weapons and armor plating. Nations that had been rivals for centuries put aside their differences, united by a simple truth: if humanity didn't stand together, they would fall separately. President Yoon Ji-han addressed the planet from the United Earth Council chambers. Her face was broadcast to every screen, every device, every corner of human civilization. "We stand at a threshold," she said. "For the first time in our history, we face an enemy that wants to erase us simply for existing, but we will not submit. We will not kneel. We will show the galaxy what humanity is capable of when we refuse to accept defeat." In a military complex beneath the mountains of Colorado, General Taeyang Cho stood before a holographic display of the surrounding star systems. Red markers indicated known Valthene positions. The enemy was building up forces, preparing for a massive assault. Intelligence suggested 400 ships, maybe more. Earth had managed to build or retrofit 80 vessels capable of deep space combat in the 3 months since the Battle of Epsilon Reach. The math was brutal. 400 against 80. Even with humanity's advantage in kinetic weapons and AI systems, those odds meant extinction. Dr. Bora Shin had a different answer. She stood in a research laboratory surrounded by pieces of captured Valthene technology, salvaged from the wrecks at Epsilon Reach. For weeks, her team had been studying the alien shields, trying to understand how they worked. Finally, they had a breakthrough. "Their shields are incredibly advanced," Bora explained to General Taeyang during a secure video conference. "They can absorb almost unlimited energy, but they're designed for a specific type of warfare: energy weapons, plasma bolts, directed radiation. They never expected kinetic weapons because most advanced civilizations abandoned those centuries ago. So our railguns still work," Taeyang said. "Yes, but there's more. We've learned how to create hybrid shields that can handle both energy and kinetic impacts. We can't match their energy absorption, but we can survive hits that would have destroyed our ships before. I'm transmitting the designs now. Every ship we have should be refitted immediately." Taeyang studied the data scrolling across his screen. It was good news, but it wasn't enough. They still needed a way to overcome the numerical advantage. He turned to his tactical team. "We can't win a straight fight. We need something unexpected, something they've never seen before." Commander Youngmi Ro stepped forward. She was a special operations officer, someone who thought in terms of unconventional warfare. "General, what if we don't fight their way? Their ships are massive, powerful, designed for direct combat. What if we hit them with something small and fast, something they can't easily target?" The idea crystallized quickly. Humanity would build swarms, thousands of small fighter craft, each one equipped with minimal weapons but incredible speed and agility. They would be piloted remotely by operators on larger command ships using VR interfaces. Earth's gaming culture, years of training people to think in 3 dimensions and react with split-second timing, would become a military advantage. The swarm doctrine was born. Factories across Earth began producing the small craft at incredible speed. Each fighter was cheap to build, easy to replace, and deadly in numbers. Meanwhile, skilled pilots were recruited from unexpected places. Professional gamers, sim enthusiasts, anyone with fast reflexes and spatial awareness. They trained in simulators that became more advanced every day. Captain Jiwan watched the preparations from the bridge of the Indomitable. Her ship had been repaired and upgraded with the new hybrid shields. Around her, the human fleet was assembling at Terra's Gate, a strategic point between Earth and the incoming Valthene armada. She could see the small fighters launching from carrier vessels, thousands of them, like schools of metallic fish in the darkness of space. Lieutenant Minho was coordinating with the fighter wings, his tactical displays showing a bewildering array of position markers. "Captain, the pilots are ready. Most of them have never been in actual combat, but their simulation scores are excellent." "Simulations don't shoot back," Jiwan said quietly, but she didn't have a choice. None of them did. The Valthene were coming and humanity had to be ready. On the other side of the contested space, Grand Admiral Thexazal stood aboard his flagship, the super dreadnought Eternal Dominion. Around him, 400 Valthene warships hung in formation, a display of power that should have terrified any opponent. He had personally taken command for this battle. The humans had embarrassed his empire, destroyed his fleets, killed one of his best warlords. That insult would be answered with total annihilation. "All ships advance," he commanded. "We will crush them and then we will burn their homeworld." The Valthene Empire will not tolerate defiance. The 2 fleets met at Terra's Gate. For a moment, sensors on both sides calculated distances, velocities, combat solutions. Then the battle began, and space became hell. The Valthene advanced in their traditional formation, massive ships moving with practiced coordination. Their energy weapons lit up the darkness, beams of destruction reaching out toward the human fleet. The new hybrid shields absorbed some of the damage, but ships still died. The destroyer Braveheart was the first casualty, its reactor detonating when a Valthene battleship focused its full firepower on a single target. Then the swarm hit them. 6,000 small fighters, each moving at incredible speed, each piloted by a human operator who had grown up playing 3-dimensional combat games. They came from every direction at once, weaving through space in patterns that seemed random, but were actually coordinated through their shared network. The Valthene tried to target them with point defense systems designed to stop missiles and torpedoes. But the fighters were smarter than missiles. They dodged, they jinked, they moved in ways that confused automated targeting. The Valthene gunners, trying to track manually, found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer number of targets. The fighters swarmed individual Valthene ships like insects, attacking much larger prey. Each fighter carried limited weapons, but 6,000 fighters meant 6,000 attacks happening simultaneously. Railgun rounds chipped away at armor. Micromissiles detonated against weapon ports. The fighters were so small and fast that the Valthene's massive energy cannons couldn't track them effectively. Jiwan watched the tactical display with growing hope. It was working. The Valthene formation was breaking apart as ships tried to maneuver away from the swarms. Their advantage in firepower was being negated by their inability to effectively target the tiny craft buzzing around them. But the human losses were mounting too. Fighters died by the dozens, then by the hundreds. Each death was a person, someone sitting in a VR chair aboard a carrier ship who suddenly found their screens going dark. Some of them knew they were about to die and managed to ram their fighter into critical sections of Valthene ships. Others simply vanished in bursts of fire. The larger human ships pressed forward, taking advantage of the chaos. The Indomitable fired salvo after salvo into a Valthene cruiser that was trying to shake off a cloud of fighters. The ship's shields collapsed and railgun slugs tore through its hull. It died slowly, venting atmosphere and spinning out of control. Hours passed. The battle became a grinding, desperate affair. 35 human capital ships were destroyed, but over 200 Valthene vessels were gone, more than half their fleet. The aliens had never experienced anything like this. Their traditional tactics, refined over centuries of conquest, were useless against an enemy that simply refused to fight the way they expected. Grand Admiral Thexazal realized he was losing. The thought was incomprehensible, but the evidence was all around him. His fleet was being torn apart by primitives using simple weapons and unconventional tactics. He made a decision that would have been unthinkable before this day. All ships focus fire on the command carriers. Kill their fighter control centers. The Valthene concentrated their remaining firepower on the human carriers that were coordinating the swarm attacks. 3 carriers died in quick succession, and suddenly thousands of fighters found themselves without central coordination. The attack became less focused, less effective, but Commander Youngmi had anticipated this. She had built redundancy into the system. The fighters' AI took over, allowing them to operate semi-autonomously. They weren't as effective without human pilots, but they were still dangerous. Jiwan saw an opportunity. The Valthene Admiral's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, had moved forward to participate directly in the battle. It was a massive vessel, bristling with weapons, its shields powerful enough to absorb incredible punishment. But shields had to be lowered briefly when a ship fired its own weapons. And the dreadnought was firing constantly. "Minho," she said, "can we get a boarding team onto that flagship?" He looked at her like she had gone insane. "Captain, that's suicide." "We'd have to get through their shields, dock with a hostile vessel, and then fight through corridors full of enemy soldiers." "But can we do it?"